Hello gamers, I'm Ank, and in this video I will talk about the sad reality of Ashes of Creation and its long overdue conclusion. For legal reasons, I have to say this. I am making no legal claim against anyone in this video. It is entirely my subjective, moral opinion on this topic and what constitutes a scam. So when I use the word scam, know that it is just my interpretation of it. However, it is not how the law says things, and legally, this is not a scam. But please don't be too upset about it, because this is just an alpha opinion and it will surely improve in 10 years or so. I also want to apologize, because even though I was 90% certain this was a scam, I didn't bother to make a video about it recently, especially with the Steam release, to let people know they should not be purchasing this game, as it will not deliver on what they promised. I made a video in the past where I highlighted the red flags with this project. This should have been enough for anyone to come to the conclusion that they should keep their wallet far away from this project. However, I have been extremely generous in that video, and while I highlighted all the reasons I will not be giving them my money, I couldn't at the time say that this was surely a scam. As time passed and they released the testing phases, I became more certain of it. But that was my personal opinion, and I didn't make a video about it. Especially when the vast majority of MMORPG content creators were singing the highest praises for this project, despite the terrible state it was in. In general, I also don't like to make negative videos. I'm here to have fun. Talking about shit like this is the opposite of that. However, just because the right thing is unpleasant to do should not stop us from doing it. Anyway, realistically, all this is just an excuse. I should have made a video, because if it helped even one person not waste their money on this scam, it would have been well worth it. And for that, I'm sorry. Anyway, let's get back to the topic and talk about why I consider this project a scam. But first, as I said in the intro, you need to be aware that the law will not consider it a scam. When the law looks at a scam, they define it as a fraudulent intent to take money without delivering a product. Legally speaking, intent is important and very hard to prove in cases like this, as we do not have any mind-reading technology that can be used in court, at least not yet. This becomes the way a lot of these scammers get away with it. There are also few things that work in their favor in this case, such as them having evidence of active development, private funding, and they delivered a product, even if that product is not what was promised. As far as the law is concerned, this is a failed project and not criminal fraud. I know it shouldn't be like that, but that's just how things are. Personally, I am not the law, I can have a different opinion, and I do not care about intent. I see things in a very black and white kind of way. Someone made a promise, based on that promise took money from people, and then did not deliver on what was promised. If you take money from someone to create a car and instead you deliver a bike, it might not be legally seen as a scam. But for me, that qualifies it as a scam. Ashes of Creation is no different. It made countless promises, it didn't deliver on those promises, even after more than 11 years of development. Please do not misunderstand me. The problem is not that these individuals took money from people and failed. That happens often enough. People fail. It's normal. The problem is they took money from people while lying, constantly, repeatedly, pathologically so, which in my mind qualifies it as a scam. I hope that made it pretty clear, so let's move on. The Ashes of Creation defenders, and there's two types. One is gamers and the other one is content creators. I separate these two categories because there are massive differences between them. Despite content creators trying to make themselves appear as just normal gamers that got sadly scammed by this just like the rest, this couldn't be further from the truth. Content creators stood to make massive amounts of money from Ashes. Not only did Ashes have an incredibly lucrative referral program that even promised cash rewards, but these people also made tons of money from making positive Ashes videos. Since I cannot be bothered with the math myself, I asked AI to lowball a number. and as you can see, the incentives were quite good. Again, this is lowballing the number. The real number was probably multiple times higher. In my opinion, even if they didn't get paid by Ashes, the ad revenue and simply the fact that a massive number was dangled in front of their faces was one of the main reasons why these people didn't speak up against Ashes, even as evidence kept mounting up. All this so far would have been disingenuous and scummy, but kinda expected. However, like all garbage human beings, these people couldn't help themselves. The moment any popular content creator talked out against Ashes of Creation, they had a massive incentive to argue against them. Being dogpiled for simply having reasonable questions happened to quite a few content creators. Probably the most well-known one is Narc, a content creator that built his career on Ashes of Creation and was very supportive of the project. But maybe because he had an awakening and realized this project is just scamming people, he couldn't in good conscience keep supporting this project. As a result, a coordinated smear campaign was launched against him. This was so vicious that it got to the point where it affected his mental health and he deleted his YouTube channel and other social media. He deleted years of his life's work, and I don't think most people realize how far you have to push someone for them to do something like this, and how despicably evil doing something like that to another human being for simply asking questions and pointing out inconsistencies. Now, this is not an isolated case either. This happened to other content creators as well. I know I'm just stating the obvious, it's not saying anything new. Most popular content creators are pure trash human beings that only care about the money. But I had to explain what incentives there were for you to understand the context. The other type of defenders are just normal gamers. These people sadly are experiencing cognitive dissonance. So please keep in mind, even if they are obnoxious and often of very limited mental capacity, they are victims in all of this. They simply saw a product that promised something they would like. They saw almost all content creators praise this as the second coming of World of Warcraft. They have these scammers hold live streams and promise them the moon. So as a direct result, even if they play the game and they saw with their own eyes that it was complete trash, they ended up disregarding their own experience, because everyone around them was telling them that reality is different than what they perceive, or that reality will get better with time. It is not entirely their fault, and while they have some responsibility and accountability for allowing themselves to be scammed, most of the burden rests on both the developers that made unrealistic promises and the content creators that created an environment that silenced anyone that raised valid questions. I've seen this a lot over the past few days. People calling out the Ashes of Creation community for being delusional, obnoxious, and stupid. It's fair, but I think it's also important to keep in mind that these people are victims of a scam. So try not to be too harsh, and if you have criticism and energy to direct it, maybe direct it at those that deserve it. Regardless of the circumstances, it is a sad time when fellow gamers get scammed. I don't want this video to take 70 hours, so sadly I cannot talk about every lie they ever told. However, the last few things that happened in this saga of lies is that they released the game into early access on Steam. They waited until the money from Steam cleared, and 3 days after that, Steven announced that he is resigning and that a big bad board has taken control from him and he cannot agree with the decision being made. I don't know if he was referring to some sort of sentient snowboard, because in the company filings he appears to be the only member of the board of directors with 0 vacancies. Maybe it's some sort of split personality, who knows at this point. Anyway, this guy claimed in a 2021 interview that there is no board and no investors and that he has full control over everything. Obviously, this doesn't add up. It appears that he actually had outside investment. I'm not going too deep into this because there is too little information at this time. It might just be part of a plan he made, since it appears he owes money to his friends from the previous multi-level marketing business he was a part of. So there are too many unknowns to say for sure if this was just a well-orchestrated plan for legal purposes or he actually owes money. Also, it's important to note that previously to this, he started shielding some of his assets, like a multi-million-dollar house he owns, which would make anyone reasonably assume that at the time he knew this was coming and did it in preparation. Then release the game on Steam to take as much money as possible from the gaming community, and not even 2 months into early access, pull the rug. All this while somehow managing to paint himself as the victim in all this. Sounds like a poorly written script by someone that had their brain melted by crack, but it's the reality of the situation. So where does this leave the real victims? The people that believed in this project, people that waited more than a decade of their lives for this game, and were ready to wait a few more years, because let's face it, what the game had to offer at this time was a very bad joke, especially after more than 11 years of development. As it stands right now, those people most likely lost all their money. Even if it was to be recovered, it will probably be a very long legal process, and by the looks of it, Steven probably shielded all his assets. Not only is there very little chance that the legal system will do anything at all about it, but even if they do, they will probably not recover any money for the victims of this scam. Also, I assume that after waiting over a decade, people would rather have a game than the money back. Getting the money back would be a net loss. Who knows what the future holds? Maybe a different company buys this project and continues it. If something like that happens, it might just be another scam. Personally, I think anyone worth their salt will consider this project radioactive, especially with the reputation that it now has, and if you get scammed again by someone re-releasing this pile of garbage, at that point, you deserve it. If you can take anything from this situation and from this video, take this. If someone promises you something, especially in gaming, you should never give them any money until they have a solid release date in the near future, and even then, it would be best to wait until it's actually released. Also keep this in mind. If they cannot convince investors, in most cases it means they do not have a good product. If people that spend their lives weighing if these projects will be successful or not do not want to support a project, it is most likely because it's not worth supporting. There have been cases where this was wrong, and there are a few crowdfunded projects that actually delivered, but that is just a handful of games and it is not the norm. Anyway, if we ignore this situation, we live in the best time for gaming. There is no reason for you to waste your money and time on garbage games like Ashes. And if you're looking for new MMORPGs, there are plenty coming out in the future. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching, and if you got scammed by Steven, I hope you use this as a life lesson. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe, or don't. See you in the next one, gamers.